All right, well, I'm in the Meadow House and it is fall. And I just brought in a lot of the plants. They are not going to stay here. They're just in here temporarily because we had a light frost. It wasn't like below freezing, but there was some frost in the morning hours. And because this land slopes down, a lot of the cold air will push over the mountains and kind of land in this little valley that we have here. So I moved some of the euphorbia in. This is kind of amazing because this one was really orange, if you recall, just like a couple weeks ago, but as soon as I moved it in, you could see how much greener it's gotten. This is the Euphorbia rigida, and I absolutely love this plant. I think it's so gorgeous. And all these other euphorbia and agave that I have moved in here, these have to go into new pots. That might be one of my winter projects. And I already fertilized these, if you recall, but I'm going to go around, take a look at some of the plants in this area and fertilize them as I go, give them a good water. And they'll use that macro and micronutrients in totally different ways during the fall months. So they'll probably end up using it not necessarily to grow, but just to store it in the soil, in their roots, and begin to use it maybe for sugars or energy, growing the roots. And we don't have any grow lights in here, so we have to kind of rely on the light that comes in. You could see that we have some pretty good light in the south side. In fact, if you see this Xerocysios, let me move this out so I could show you. This guy right here has lots of new little tendrils. Can you see that? It's pretty neat. So it's looking to clamber on some things. You could see there's a lot of new growth right here too. At this stage, it looks like it's crawling on itself, like it's wrapping around itself. But I'm going to direct it here. It'll be very challenging to be able to close the shades here. But yeah, so there's not that they're not growing, even though it's the fall months. I also noticed one of the aloes that's flowering. So you could see that this is about to flower. And I've had a lot of new growth on this Hoya as well, as you could see here. Folks may be wondering, where's the leaves? But that's kind of how Hoyas do it. They'll just send out these long stems. You see these are like little aerial roots. And pretty soon afterwards, once they're happy, they'll start pumping out their leaves. So there's quite a lot that's going on here. I have lost a couple plants, unfortunately. But a lot of new great growth on most of the others. So I'm just going to give them a good fertilizing. These plants I don't expect to grow too much. So the light that's coming in here is going to be east facing, so it's a really nice gentle light. Here's one of these beautiful cattleyas that I had picked up at some point. A lot of new growth, so you could see beautiful new green growth and some nice aerial roots growing here. Didn't flower this year, might have not given it enough light. And here's another one of the orchids. I'm just going to give them pretty much all indoor fertilizer. We also have like orchid fertilizer, which is focused on more blooms. But because I don't expect them to bloom in the fall months, that I'm not going to worry about that. We also have the cactus fertilizer as well. And but I'm just going to give them all the general indoor houseplant food. And this is organic, so it has a lower N, P, and K and has a number of micronutrients as well. So hopefully they'll enjoy that. I noticed my Pachira aquatica has also put out some new foliage here. But as it's aging, and I want to say that this is probably 7 years old now, if I could guess, maybe a little bit older. As it's aged, it's been losing the white variegation on it. Here's my Dioscorea. I think this is, you could see it's kind of wrapped around my philodendron here. So I had to pull the philodendron out because it snapped. And so I'm just rerooting it in this water along with some of this Hoya. But this is my Dioscorea. You can see some of the old leaves, but it's starting to get some size to it. Let me take some of this old leafage off. So if you recall, I probably repotted this maybe 2 years ago, but it's a slow grower. You have to be patient with it. This is one of my favorite Hoyas. This is Commingiana, and this has also experienced a lot of new growth. Take a look at this. It's kind of a perfect place for it in the house because it can just reach out in both the kitchen and the living room. This is one of the orchids that I had picked up on an orchid tour in Pennsylvania. And this is the one that gets it's called red wheat because it gets a little flower on it that kind of looks reminiscent to wheat. This is another Hoya, but this is not one that branches out. You could see that it had flowered right here. That's the peduncle. And that is one of the starry ones that is more shrubby and herbaceous. And then this, if you recall, this is one of the blingy things that I recently used on my epipremnum, so I wrapped that around. And here's the other one. So you could see where I put the Hoya Sunrise. I don't know if it will get enough good sunlight for the leaves to redden up, but it seems very comfortable in this space. Now, as it's starting to get colder, we will have to be a bit more aware of how cold it gets in the windows because some of these plants may not be able to handle it. My experience is that a lot of the agaves or the aloes, even the gasteria and some of the opuntia and other cacti, they can handle being in this kind of situation where you have coldness. Probably less so if you have tropical or subtropical begonias or some types of Hoyas. I'll make note that this one does not have any drainage. Let me just see, it's like a snake. I have not repotted this in a very long time, and it's grown so much. I mean, it was started off as maybe this big, and this has grown, and you could see that it's this kind of cool color because it's always been in direct sunlight. So eventually I'll probably need to repot this, and it probably will benefit from having some drainage, but I'm just really mindful when I water things that don't have drainage. Let's get these some water. This one has yet to flower for me, so I don't know why it's so shy. Here's another Xerocisseos, but different species. It doesn't have the tendency to vine and twine as much as Xerocisseos denguii. And then here's one of my plants that hasn't done so well, speaking of a begonia, but you could see it's still there, but it's not doing so hot. So hopefully a little fertilizer and some water will do it well. May need to be in actually a little less light. Okay, so I'm gonna grab these plants up here. This one is a great example of a plant that I had to cut back a little bit. It had some mealybugs, and I cut it back, and I seem to have gotten it, fingers crossed. This is another plant that it doesn't get any light from above, so you can see it has a little middle-aged bald spot. And it started to put more of its leaves out towards the edges. And that's just in the condition of the type of light that we're giving it in the place that it is. Same with this one. So you can see that it'll put its light, or its leaves out to the side where it gets its light. This one's a bit dry. That's kind of my fault because when they're up there this high, I have a tendency to water them less. Now these prayer plants have tended to do really well, but if I don't water them, they get a little flaccid. So you can see that this one, to me, feels a little flaccid. Haven't given it as much water as it may need. Same with this one. This one's actually a relatively new one that I brought in from Brooklyn. So my philodendron was here, but I had taken the philodendron outside. And so another plant took its place. I like to have all the prayer plants back here because they're not getting a tremendous amount of light. They get some western light, and the eastern light kind of just comes in gently from this borrowed light from the window that's been cut out. Here though, this anthurium has done extremely well. As you could see, it even put out an inflorescence. I wonder if it smelled like anything. Nothing that I could smell. You could see how this blue elf aloe has really deepened its color. This is a south-facing window, so this gets a tremendous amount of light. This normally would be kind of a soft powdery blue color. So if I want to take it back and maybe put it in a western window, it'll start to get that different color, but this is it protecting its leaves from its sun. Same thing with this aloe. This could get very green, but in this type of light, you could see it's really reddened up. This is my mermaid's tail. This is one of my aloes that I had repotted. It was a pup at some point. And these are all looking pretty good. Yeah, they have some dead leaves on the bottom, but that's normal for an aloe. And this one, you know, kind of had this look like it was a mustache, because a lot of aloes, when they start out, they are like an open book, but they start to spiral and will look more like this. So you could see that this is in the process of starting to spiral. And it has a little offset right here too, which is pretty cool. This has grown quite a bit. I'd have to look at like old photos to see this, but this is in literally the same pot. And then this was where my birds were, so I could see like a little tail feather and a little bird poop. That was in probably Peepo and Tutu's room for a while. And all of these are looking mighty fine. I love these plants, which are just very low maintenance. This one probably could do with a little bit more light, because you see it's kind of constricted a bit. So if it were getting enough light, it would probably be fatter. So that is probably one thing that I could correct. And this Sansevieria, it was supposed to be a variegated version, but it doesn't have a strong variegation. But that one has grown quite a bit, and so has this aloe. This one could look a little bit better. I mean, it has a lot of new growth on the top, but on the base, it's a lot of dead leaves. I can't believe this Haworthia. This doesn't have a tremendous amount of light. Typically in the wild, Haworthia or Gasteria will have nurse plants, so they'll have plants that shade them from the heavy sun, especially during the noontime or during the height of the day. So surprisingly, those are the succulents that do really well in medium to lower light conditions. All right, this is one of my anthuriums. Kind of cruel because this doesn't get a tremendous amount of light up here. And if you recall, my philodendron that was in the kitchen used to be in this one, but it snapped off. So I had to move it down. Oh, look at the leaves on the xylophalloides. So that's pretty cool. Some new growth there. And then this Hoya, you could tell has a little of new growth because The new leaves are slightly red, lighter color. This is a plant that was gifted to me by my friend Alex, and I took a cutting and gave one back to him. I took lots of different cuttings from this euphorbia, and that was a pretty special plant for him. And he's going to be traveling with us to Costa Rica, one of our botanical trips. This is my tortum, so I planted it here. One of the plants that used to be here had died back. So I'm going to try my tortum in this location now. One of the plants I've been most impressed with is this Rhipsalis. And you could see that it's put on quite a lot of texture and color and length. So I think this would be a really good place for a lot of Rhipsalis. So I might consider bringing some of my collection in from Brooklyn, which is still in Brooklyn, and bringing that in. This has had a tremendous amount of growth, but I feel like it's starting to, I need to get a little bit more soil to prop it up, or maybe get a couple sticks and like prop it up, because it has a tendency to fall down. This is another great plant. I should probably get a little bit of bling for this too, because right now it's just crawling up the stick, and you could see that, I think this is a caudata, right? Yeah, this is a caudata. Kind of a bit more prehistoric looking. Now this Scindapsus, I really wanted it to attach to the wall, but it's going in the completely opposite direction. So as try as I might, it just doesn't want to connect to the clay. But I love when they actually do start to shingle on the wall, because their leaves get so impressive. Get my Hoya up here. And then I have a begonia now up here. This is the other plant that I had swapped out. Okay, bathroom plants. Okay, this is our Hoya crinkle. This has been a really easy to care for plant here. It does sometimes get caught in the door, so you just have to be mindful. This begonia has been chugging along. The leaves have definitely gotten smaller. I'll see what I could do with this fertilizing. And then here's my Ludicea. There's been some dieback, but it's been really good. Now here is one of my beautiful aloes that, if you recall, I got this from this area from a grower around here a number of years ago, and I was wearing it like a mustache. So it was like one of those ones that has now aged enough that it's starting to ripple about and turn like a spiral. And you can see there's a lot of, like, maybe I'll show you. There's some babies, there's some offsets in there too, which is kind of nice. So it's quite impressive because this is a north-facing window. This is not normally where I would have them, but they're actually doing pretty good. This Rhipsalis has not been doing that great. So I had this in a pretty dark corner of the bathroom, and I moved it now to closer to the window because I feel like I was just mistreating it. And this Hoya croniana has flowered multiple times. It does get a little chilly around this window, so it might be one of the ones that I have to move in. And this Schlumbergera was in a different house here, and I moved it down. It was a moving in gift from our neighbor, and so that has flowered. And here's some of this Dischidia and Rhipsalis. They're doing mighty fine for not having a tremendous amount of light. And here we go. This is my Hoya linearis. Probably could have come in here and watered this a little bit sooner. I still need to have a good place for it. Dischidia and my little aloe, if I could get just a little hint of water there. So we don't get a lot of light right behind here, but this one I had just brought in from outside, and it really lightened up. So I had this first in Eastern light, and then I put it in Western light. Not a tremendous amount of growth, but I had to get this in because these are jungle cacti. So these take a lot less cold than, say, some of our Southwest native versions. But otherwise, I'm pretty happy with the plants that we have in here. I feel like a lot of these I had in my Brooklyn apartment, so they were acclimatized to, I would say, medium light. Not everything was coming directly from a place that I had just bought it and it was growing in like optimum conditions. So I feel like by just hardening it off a little bit and having them in a home already helped. And also I think the plant choices. There was a couple that, like I said, that have come and gone, fallen by the wayside, but the rest have really persevered, and this has been in here now for, I think, over 1.5 years. Now I'll move these to another location, probably up top, and I'll make this another project. But in the meantime, thank you so much for joining me on my fertilizing in the fall for all my houseplants here in the Meadow House. And I'll see you in the next episode. Bye. Stay tuned on Plant One On Me for more botanical tours, talks, and how-tos. And if you're looking to further your knowledge on the plant kingdom, then have a look at our various online courses from Troubleshoot Your Houseplants to the Houseplant Masterclass. Additionally, we have a second channel we started last year called Flock Finger Lakes, where we cover more on outdoor gardening, habitat restoration, agroforestry, and even more. So check that out if that interests you. Otherwise, we'll see you in the next episode.